Hello everybody, welcome to the Stokes Sound podcast. I am your host Ed Stokes, and today we are very lucky. We have special guest Max Smith. Hello Max, how are you doing?
Hello, I am good, thanks mate. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. And today he's on the show because he's going to be talking about vocal tuning, vocal production, vocal arranging, and everything that you guys want to know on how to get a pop sounding vocal. Max is your guy. We are super lucky. Max has done lots of stuff. Absolutely incredible at doing what he does. Very talented, and he's also a very nice person, which is also very important for the music industry and the music business side of it as well. So, Max, thank you so much for coming on. I mean,
thank you for having me.
Thank you. Well, let's chat about, I guess, vocals then, and the process of what you do. And you know, the big topic is vocal tuning, and I had another podcast where we were talking about some vocal arranging, but the vocal tuning element of it, we wanted to go into a little bit more detail. I mean, I know there's only so much you can talk about vocal tuning, so of course we won't be too long on that. But you know, our listeners would love to know kind of what is your process when you get a vocal through from a client or, you know, a singer.
So yeah. Well, I'll just say my name's Max Smith.
Yeah, I've just got straight
producer,
in there.
Songwriter, producer, songwriter, vocal producer, if you want to call it that as well. It all kind of falls into the same like umbrella, because everyone does everything these days, which I guess is a good thing. But yeah, but with vocals, I think. I like to think that's kind of my thing. I really enjoy doing that. It's like usually my favorite part of the session. I've been doing a lot more vocal prod just for people. So people are coming just to get the vocal done, or like, you know, some people, we had it recently with a client of ours that come in and, you know, the vocal that they had recorded wasn't up to scratch and they just wanted like another person to take a look at it. And, you know, it's quite nice that you get to dive into like the final steps of, you know, what ultimately is people are going to hear before it goes to mixing and mastering. It is kind of one of those things which, like, vocals to me anyway, are like the most important part of the track.
Agreed.
We're saying that depends on it is depending on what day, to be fair. If we're writing and we're like, or like, you know, we're trying to get like the best top line and whatnot, and we're trying to get, you know, what's going to complement the song, I think that's really important. If we're producing and stuff, it's, you know, obviously you kind of you can fall into a rabbit hole of making cool sounds and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's just making, like, for me, it's just making sure that what people are hearing and it's just capturing like the best possible performance, getting the most emotion out of it, and like just making sure that the vocal that the listener's hearing is going to tell them a story and make them feel something, I guess.
So do you prefer recording the vocal then than just getting the vocal sent through?
See, it depends. Like, it depends on
the situation.
On what we're doing. Yeah, like I love recording it, and all the people that I record for and work with, I love recording their vocals. And it's, you know, it's quite a personal thing, because like, especially if someone's coming in with a song which is like, you know, it can be, like quite an intimate and quite a personal connection to a song for somebody. Like, it might mean something that's like means a lot to them, and obviously it's your job to click record and make sure that you capture that. But just, you know, there's so many things that go into it, like kind of making people comfortable, and like not just jumping straight in with cool, okay, right, jump in the booth and we're gonna run it. Like, you know, sometimes you want to like kind of sit down and actually just spend the first half an hour of your session just having a chat and a coffee and making someone feel comfortable in the room, you know, which is quite lucky, because so as Jordan mentioned on the podcast when he come on, when he was streaming with you, we're part of like a production writing team, myself, Jordan and Dean. So like when we do our sessions together, more so for the writing side and the production side, you know, the first half an hour of the session is just catching up and seeing what everyone's been up to and listening to some music and like getting inspired, I guess. So, it's very rare that we, you don't get me wrong, you do have some people that come in and they're very much like, cool, I'm here, I want to record a vocal.
Yeah.
Um, but the best performances you get out of people is when they're comfortable,
Well, it makes everything else
And, like,
easier in the process, doesn't it? So,
literally. And you want people to feel comfortable. You want people to want to work with you and actually like go away from it thinking like, wow, that was like the best I could have done.
and I
You
always
know?
say to people as well, they will always remember you. If a vocalist has a great vocal session, they will always come back to you. And, it kind of goes on to say, when people say, well, how do you get clients? Well, it takes a long time to build up a client list. But if you are good at your job and you are nice like you, and, everyone, and you understand each other on a personal level as well as a professional level, it's like a domino effect. Clients will keep coming back. They'll keep coming to record their second song, their third song, So for all the listeners out there,
Exactly.
these tips that Max is saying is so valuable, because being comfortable in a room is probably the number one most important thing before you can record that vocal. So, yeah.
Literally, like, because obviously you wanted to talk about like tuning and stuff like that, but these fit like, to me anyway, before you even think about that stuff, if you can get, if you can squeeze the best performance out of somebody, you want to be listening out thinking like, I want to be able, well, obviously it's like there's many things in your mind when you're recording it, but one of them is we need to get the best performance, so it means that we don't have to do as much in post. And like, honestly, like, obviously, like, what you can do in post, but when we're recording it, it's not usually on my mind of, oh, don't worry, like we can Melodyne that later, that, because
So you're not a lazy producer.
no, like, people don't want to hear that. People don't want to, don't get me wrong, like, auto-tune is like a sound nowadays. Like, people come in and they're like, cool, just, I'll record it and then just chuck loads of auto-tune on me and like make me sound like T-Pain, but which is great. I like that sound. Like, if you listen to like a lot of current pop, like, Charlie XCX has absolutely nailed it with that sound.
Yeah.
And
it's a skill as well to do autotune. I think people don't understand that it's not just record a vocal and just stick autotune on it. There is a lot that goes into it, and that's kind of where you're an absolute genius with that sort of stuff, Max, and that's why you're on, because I want you to kind of give us all your secrets. Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's not really much secret to it other than having a good voice.
Very true.
Having an amazing voice and an amazing vocal and an amazing performance just makes it, like, it makes your job easy. Like, all you have to do is just click record and direct. Like, I find myself doing more so now. I used to be a bit more like, I used to be a bit more kind of, what's the word? Like, when, like, I started off wanting to like engineer and like wanting to record bands and stuff like that. And, starting out, the vocal, it was important, but like, you could sometimes think more towards, oh, we can get like a really big guitar sound, or we can get a really nice synth sound and stuff. But like, in the last few years, like, really honing into that and like just dialing in on the vocal is like, it just makes a song. If you can nail a good vocal and get everything all locked in with that,
Well, it's a bit like,
and also a good song as well. You can have an amazing vocal.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, because you can have, if you have a great production but a bad song, it's not going to do well. But if you have a great song and an okay production, it still has potential to do well. Obviously, you want everything to be the best it can be in every single stage, but everything comes back to the song and the singer. It kind of that does. So if we talk about then kind of the vocal, editing side. So, we've spoken about making the singer feel comfortable and the recording of it all. Now, if you get a vocal sent into you to edit, or you get a vocal that you've recorded, is your process different? And if so, why? Or, what is your different processing, whether you've recorded it or whether you haven't recorded it and it's just been sent?
So it's similar process. Recording, like, if I go to what we do when we record, and like what, obviously when we're tracking, we're quite fortunate. We're recording through some really nice mics, and some amazing outboard equipment at our studio. And So getting, the process for that is kind of, we like to kind of get that stuff locked in. And
Yeah.
if somebody does send a vocal, and it's not exactly like how we would have recorded it, I sometimes try and it's weird because I don't think about these things like as such. So I'm having to actually think about it.
It's
But
because we're talking
I just
about
do it. Yeah, no, I usually just do it without, just by just going on a computer.
It's because you're a
and doing
natural.
it, I try. But but I know that, like, I like to track like through, like for a Neve and compress using a distressor on the way in and whatnot. So like, I kind of like to try if the vocal, if I can tell that, and you can usually tell if it, like, what it's been recorded with, if it's getting compressed, and like, I'd say what it's been recorded with 95% of the time, if we're getting sent a vocal, which is very rare actually, it's, it's recorded with a 7B,
Yeah.
because that's what everyone's got nowadays. But but yeah, like, we kind of like to treat it like we were recording it. So if you can do a little bit of processing on it before you even start editing, like compressing it a little bit, just like enough for it to be like, especially, just enough
Is
for
this
it
sending out to outboard compression and then back in? Or
depends on how lazy I'm being.
Right, okay.
But honestly, like the UA distressor, it acts and reacts the same as like the hardware one.
Yeah.
If you are just, a lot of the time as well is, especially with vocal edits and stuff, it's a lot of the time it's on the fly. So, when if Jay and I are doing a session together, and like we're like quite tight on time, Jay will jump in and like work on a production, work on like some sounds and whatnot. And if we've recorded a vocal, I'll just take the vocal and sit at the back of the room. So stuff
Can you
like
talk
that,
us through your process then? If you get that vocal then, and
so that's if we've like recorded it. So
that's
like,
if you've recorded it. Okay.
It's been processed.
Right.
But if it hasn't been processed already, like if they're sending it to us, then we'll just spend a bit of time making sure that it's, just giving the vocal a bit of a spa day, just making sure that it's in a good place, ready to, and that does involve like RXing and like, getting rid of your pops and clicks,
Deep breath.
clicks. See, I recently discovered Waves Deep Breath, and it's amazing in sessions. It's amazing like being on the fly, because if you're like just recording a demo vocal with someone and it gets to the end of the day, and obviously like I like to go through and I like to manually select all my breaths and separate everything, and I don't know, I
knock
like
them
that,
down like 6 dB. I go through.
So what I do is I actually go through, and when I'm doing vocals, on vocals, I go through my lead vocal and I'll basically chop all the breaths, do all my fades and do my breaths and get everything ready to go. And I select them all and then I normalize them so that all at the same volume.
Right.
All like, so say there's like 60 breaths throughout the whole song. I go through them and I'll select them and I like color them in gray. Just so they're like, they stand out next to like
next to the other vocals.
Next to the purple for your vocals. And and I just go through, select them all, and then normalize them, and then they all come out really hot. So when you're like listening to a vocal, it'll just be like more than you can actually hear over the rest of the vocal. But then because they're all sitting at the same volume, then you can just knock it down like minus 16 dB, and then you've just got this really tight, nice like kind of vocal.
That's interesting.
Like,
you normalize vocal breaths, because I but then does it not make it sound a bit unnatural? I guess if you're compressing the vocal anyway, it doesn't really matter.
No, because we've, like a lot of the compression we've done and like tone shaping is on the way in.
I see.
As far as it goes with like actually recording it. So, but it's more just as a thing, like as a leveling thing for me, because you can compress a breath in it, but it will sound sometimes it sounds a bit naff.
Yeah.
But by doing it that way, it just means that all the breaths are at the same level. So, and if it's been recorded well, obviously you've got everything at a similar level breath-wise anyway.
Yeah.
But it, like, I used to cut them all out. I used to just sack all the breaths off, and then I listened
you
to
hate breaths.
stuff. And, and then I listened to it and I was just like, it's fine, it sounds okay. But then I started like bringing them back in and just like gaining them down. But the normalizing way of doing it, if you normalize every single one as a I think it says regions, so it means it selects all of them and does it.
What are you normalizing to, like a certain level, or you just?
I just select loudness, and I think it's like -23
Right. Okay. Yeah.
on the loudness on Logic where you can do the normalizing.
Yeah.
So I just do it to loudness,
Oh, okay.
just because it.
I never
But
thought of
also
normalizing breath. It's an interesting way that I'm have to do it.
It's just an easy way to get everything to the same level because they're all going to be. But I also then go through and I'll like manually check it over.
Fantastic.
So
So
also
do you run your breaths into Melodyne then or not?
Yeah. Do it
Oh,
all
you
in
do,
there.
yeah.
And then it means that when I Melodyne, I'll go and time everything as well. Like I'll time up the breaths, and if you've got like a big jump in pitch, sometimes it can be quite interesting to like tune them and like kind of like snap them a little bit.
Nice.
But
you do your timing in Melodyne as well then?
I try and get them to sing it in time, but
of course.
but a lot of the time if we're in the production stage, it's usually just chopping up the vocal.
Yeah, because I use nudging. I think it's nudging
Yes.
in Pro Tools. Just if it's slightly early, slightly late, I kind of do it in sections before it even goes into Melodyne.
Okay.
I do
right,
it.
interesting.
Yeah,
because it's similar to how I kind of do it. I just kind of zoom right in and just like shift the like by hand, kind of just move things about.
Yeah.
But the
you do it to feel, or do you do it to grid?
To feel.
To feel, yeah.
Just kind of where it feels natural. But obviously, like listening with click and referencing, and
of course,
just making sure that it is all tight. And the thing is, but then use Melodyne as well to like just knock things. Just if it does need to, if something needs to hit on the one for a chorus or something, making sure that every part of that vocal that comes in or like, is all in time.
So can you explain your use of Melodyne then in the actual, because there's lots of people that use Melodyne. Like, once you've scanned the audio in, are you, for the listeners that are using Melodyne, as you know, that it comes up as like the red kind of regions throughout. Yeah. Are you snapping them to the center, or are you hitting Alt and kind of manually dragging them up to how you hear it? Or
so it really does depend, because a lot of the time, like I like to use Autotune and Melodyne, like in tandem. So I'll use Auto. I don't know. Autotune kind of gives this tone. I say tone. It's kind of. I don't know how to explain it. Yeah, whether it be the sound of really hard tuning or whatever. But like if you're in a session, and because like at the moment, like most of the vocals I'm working on are vocals that we've recorded, and also vocals that we've like written the song for or whatnot. And so we have a lot of control in what they're doing, if you like. I say control, but just like in terms of like actually getting them to where they need to be.
Yeah.
So, but the I've just completely lost my train of thought then.
That's all right. Your process inside once you've put it. Are you auto-tuning before Melodyne or after?
Yeah, no, after.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
Because also there's a big thing that I find is if you go, once you get into Melodyne and get in, sometimes you can go a bit trigger happy of it and tune a little bit too hard, or
very easy to go wrong.
Or like the big thing is like vibrato. We worked on a song about a year ago, and the artists, they love their natural vibrato, but when the vibrato hit in between two notes, it's quite tough to be able to like, luckily like Auto-Tune recognizes that quite well and doesn't snap it. It just keeps it quite natural and like will allow that to pass through. But with Melodyne, if you go and tune it and then snap that note to the grid, it will then snap the first point and then it will just fluctuate all the way around. So by doing, you just have to be quite careful on, like, depends on the vocalist. If it's something that's like super pop, it's going to be like slammed with Auto-Tune after. You can kind of select everything and just kind of like nudge it all in, like, 50,
and the pitch drift.
And do kind of, but I'll always go through it and like quality control it, like, because, these, without becoming that guy, all of these like AI technologies and ways of doing things are great, but you just can't beat someone actually doing it. Like,
I mean, so when you're doing it, then, so if, let's say you've got a track and you're tuning it manually, yeah. For all the listeners that want to know specifically about tuning, are you then you're going through note by note, and of course, there's always multiple ways of doing it. So, for example, what I do is I take a section, let's say, of 3 or 4 notes, I highlight them all, I double tap so it snaps them to the section, to the bang on the note, and then I just listen through. If it's snapped it to the wrong note, I change it. If I feel like although it's snapped on the note, I then lift it up a little bit to try and get that natural and that that naturalness, and also that curve that you can kind of do it. I kind of increase that curve so it sounds again more natural. Some people don't ever snap and kind of just drag it. So it, from listening to that, what would you do then with like a verse, let's say?
I would say before even Melodyne it, listen to it just to make sure that, like, it goes down to, before you even Melodyne it, your comp.
Yeah.
Just making sure you've got a really tight comp. It's the best comp that you're going to be able to get out of what the audio that you've got.
Yeah.
If the artist is with you, making sure that they're happy with it. I don't really like to Melodyne with the artist in front of me, just because maybe it's a self-conscious thing for me and them. But I like to just be on headphones or like in another room, just so then without like completely butchering it, and like, because sometimes you might make decisions which they'll hear and then they'll go, nope, I don't want to hear that.
Yeah, because you've like changed their note, or you've kind of made it a little bit flatter or sharper than how they originally sang it, but it sounds better within the mix, kind of thing. I can see. Yeah.
But yeah, just making sure that like that kind of stuff is tight before. But once you're in, if you're like, say you're doing a verse, just listen to it without anything on it, and then I can't, like, when I'm recording and like, or actually before I put it in, I like to break it down so it'll be like lead vocal verse, lead vocal pre, lead vocal chorus, lead vocal B chorus, and bridge, and so forth. But by doing that kind of stuff, it just means that if you did want to just select it all and then crank it up to tune it, you can do different amounts for different sections, just as like a base point. By doing that, it also means you don't have to go through and double tap on everything, because it's kind of put it into a ballpark. But I like to go through, and the biggest thing for me is like the transitions of notes.
Yeah.
So like if it starts lower and then goes higher, like you said, the curve, it's just making sure that you get that like smooth curve, or if it does need to be more like abrupt, making it less curved,
Then just snap it. Oh, that pitch drift's great. I love the pitch drift. Even if it starts off flat, you can just kind of lift it so it hits it bang on.
And like I've recorded some stuff for some rappers recently, and they wanted to come in and do the whole auto tune thing. And basically, obviously, like, it's great to be able to monitor it. Like, we monitor it through, we've got the universal audio version of Antares, so they can monitor in their headphones. And
so you're recording with auto tune on?
No. So you can send it to an auxiliary. So if you send it to an auxiliary and then you just don't send them the Q send of the actual channel, you just send them the Q send of the auto tune.
Right. So they're hearing the auto tune live in their headphones, but you're not actually recording the auto tune onto the audio.
No, but then I have the same setting on the channel in Logic, so then I can just play back.
Right. So you just, you're covering yourself. You get an extra control, but you also giving them what they want. I see.
Also for tracking as well. For tracking, I like to hit, even for like, whether it be like, well, with like the rappers and stuff, I'll just quickly go back and brush on that. But the curve thing, you can select it and then straighten up the curve so it is much less, and it reacts really differently to auto tune.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's softer, the auto tune will be like, even if it's all the way up, it's still, you don't get that like completely robotic thing. Whereas you do get it, but like, it also means you can step the notes a bit easier as well. So like, if you want it to do a run in a certain way, you can do that and then send it to auto tune.
So you don't make it as kind of with lots of curves. You kind of just
like if you're trying to get a certain sound, you can really dive in and like step it if you want to.
Yeah.
Which
do you
also,
leave Melodyne live then, and then auto tune after?
No.
You always.
I'll leave the Melodyne running. Well, once I've got a comp and stuff, I run it. I tried using that Melodyne Aura, the one which you can just click a spacebar and it loads in. but I just had loads of issues with it.
Yeah, it kept crashing on my one, but
yeah, I mean, it
might
works.
just be my
It's
system.
fine. Yeah, no, it works and it's great for quick and easy fixes, but like nothing beats just going through and scanning it. You know, it's there in front of you.
Exactly. And with BVs then, but so backing vocals, are you melodyning each of them individually as well? And if so, are you doing them separately or are you doing them all in one go?
So I used to do it separately, and I think you taught me how to do this.
Where takes ages doing it separately.
Yeah, I used to do it separately, go through every single one and like tune it all to match the lead. And then you showed me. I remember. I think you mentioned it, and then I went home. Like I think I was at yours, and you mentioned how you did it, and I just went straight home and tried it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've just saved hours, and it knocks off a good like couple of hour or so of melodyning, because you can just go through and select them all, like as a
do
group.
It all at once.
And I don't like to do all. I'll do sections at once. So say if I've got like a group of vocals that are happening in a chorus, I then like to go through and select it and do the whole group Melodyne thing. But making sure that you have your lead vocals still sitting there, like on the like for the markers, you know.
Yeah. So you match everything to that.
Yeah. But if you do the thing where you click it and it like opens it up so you can see multiples at the same time, that's quite good. But yeah, I think that's just making like the biggest thing is use your ears for it, because you can just select everything and click, you know, snap to grid, snap to lead vocal, and tune it, whatever. And it might listen to it, and it might sound dreadful because there's just so many artifacts and stuff. Whereas if you just use your ears and take your time with it as well, like it's the biggest thing as well is I don't know. I've kind of started thinking about it more recently. Is like, you know, you can have an amazing production and, you know, an amazing vocal and whatnot, but if you say you've got like a bit of a naff production and an amazing vocal, people are still just going to listen to the vocal before they hear the production. Like,
well, that's why the vocal is everything. It's the front of the whole thing, isn't it?
So if you can get this flawless sounding vocal and like, you know, don't get me wrong, I love like listening to like a really raw vocal, and like this kind of can translate between, even if you're doing pop stuff, to if you're doing like more, you know, even if you're doing like a singer-songwriter or something acoustic, you can translate it across, you know, just kind of use your ears for
that is very important.
You
said that because I do think, and I've said this before, like melodyning to me is an art form. There is no right way and there is no wrong way of doing it. It's literally how you feel the vocal should sound like. But massively, that is really important, is it is genre specific as well. And, you know, you can be very A or B, like, is this vocal tuning, you know, is it out or is it right or is it like in between? But like you said, I find with like acoustic songs, you want it to be in tune, but at the same time you sometimes don't want it to be bang on in tune, because it loses that kind of live element feel of the vocal, and I think that's hard to get right. Getting that balance is what I'm trying to say. I
think getting that balance is key as well. Like there's a lot of people which I've worked with, and I've, you know, or like, you know, there's some projects that come through and obviously they've not had, you know, a full kind of treatment on their vocal, if you like, before, and they're kind of a bit hesitant. And even if it's like a singer-songwriter or something, I used to record a lot of singer-songwriters at uni, and rarely touch more than a few notes in the Melodyne, thinking, okay, that's actually off, or we'll sort that. Whereas now, like, regardless of what it is, like, there's this big like misconception in pop music, I guess more to like, well, I say pop music into all music, but between like the general public, and I've seen a few like TikToks being like, oh my gosh, so and so uses autotune on their vocal, and it's just like, yeah, everyone uses a bit of tuning. It's like, you know,
the only time I do find that I actually don't use autotune is if I'm doing like kind of indie rock stuff. I'll find that Melodyne is enough. I don't really want that auto-tune sound. But then again, it's genre specific, isn't it? I'm still going in there with Melodyne. I'm still tuning notes no matter what genre. But like you said earlier, I do find auto-tune does have this electronic, metallic kind of sound to it, which works in a lot of the commercial stuff. But
it depends how you're using it as well. Like, if you're using auto-tune for the sound, then that's what you're going to get. But if you're using it literally just to tickle it a little bit, just to catch the edges, and just making sure that like having that as like your final piece of once you've tuned your vocal and whatnot and treated it.
Yeah.
Just having that just to like, it's like I say a safety net. I mean, like the thing is most
It's
of the
like
vocals
a comfort thing. It's like, I've got auto-tune on there. It's gonna have no issues.
but the thing is like it does have that. So you do have to have that quality control of going through and checking things over and whatnot.
Do you have a generic setting? Like I do 20, 20, 20.
I couldn't tell you the numbers, but I just know it's like I just know to drag it. Wait, I think
I know it will change per song, but on general terms, if I do 20, 20, 20, I think it's humanize at 20, flex thing at 20, and the actual tune speed at 20. It kind of seems to just work. I know a lot of people change like the tracking as well, but I don't go into it that much.
It depends. So if I'm like I'm just loading up the UAD one now.
Just
checking might
it.
actually put it. It might actually put it on my vocal. Yeah, no, I need to check. Reach it. Yeah, I usually kind of. Oh wow, I think this is hello. Yeah, that's on my vocal. I kind of like set it to the retune speed to about 20. Flex usually about like 35-ish.
Yeah.
And this is just like the one which is kind of the basic one, I guess, that you get with like an Apollo or whatever. But yeah, like it is per person, per vocal, per track, per se. It's like Wait, I think I'm actually still monitoring with auto-tune on, so I'm going to take this off.
Just checking.
Yeah. But
it's okay. I like the sound, so
Yeah. Maybe you should record all podcasts with auto-tune on nowadays.
It'll make it more commercial.
Yeah. Radio 1 plays your podcast.
Love it.
But yeah, no, it's like I say, yeah, like it doesn't. I could go in and break down settings and what you'd use on a vocal and whatnot, but it's the biggest thing is just use your ears. Like
that's what I say to people. Just go with the flow, and
also
if it sounds right to you, it is.
And like recently, like the biggest, like Billie Eilish, for example. Like I know Phineas has done a few like mix and masters things and broke down what he's done and like for the early Billie Eilish stuff, and even with like looking at the Logic sessions. Obviously, that's just the production session, but you can like it's been externally mixed elsewhere. But you can see, like I'm talking now, like when we're actually working on the production and the song, or like before it even goes off to mixing.
Yeah,
like that's kind of the stage which I'm generally kind of going on about now. But the if you look at that kind of project, and you can really hear that, he is just using a Logic compressor and a Logic EQ, and you can do it with that. But also, Billie Eilish has one of the greatest voices on the planet. And also, even though she is sat there with like holding like a TLM 103, it's still like pretty good mic control. Like there's definitely, I don't know, there's all these little things that, even if it is an amazing vocal, if there is a little bit of rumble, a little bit of movement, and, but it's pretty consistent, and they've managed to do a great job of it. So it doesn't really matter what you're using, or like, you could go and use, I know people that even when they're editing their vocal, they don't even touch Melodyne. They just use the Logic Flex, the grid. And
it doesn't matter how you get to it, does it? As long as you get from A to B.
Yeah. Well, different things have different sounds, but also, different people work very differently. So it's kind of,
So once you've tuned it, do you use Vocaline as well on your BVs to your lead? Or?
I used to, and then I fell out of love with it because it just kept adding artifacts, and I just thought I'd just do it by hand in Melodyne. It probably takes longer,
ages.
Yeah, but that's why I use the thing where you can select it all and like see it, because you can move it all.
Is that why you're doing all the timing in Melodyne then?
Yeah,
that makes sense. I was wondering because because
if you just use Vocaline, like, don't get me wrong, the new Vocaline looks incredible, and I've tried it and it does sound great, but I don't know. I guess once you get comfortable with something and like it becomes a bit of a habit, you just kind of stick to it.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know, different people do things very differently.
So for the listeners listening, I mean, what is kind of when if they're going to go and record vocals or go and tune or edit vocals, what kind of is there any like things that you have in place that you use in your workflow where you're like, you need to do this or you need to do that, or again, is it all just dependent on what the song is?
I used to be a bit more anal about it and be like, okay, we've got to do, even if like you're doing a demo vocal, being
Yeah.
like, okay, cool, we'll go and record this way, or like once we've done the demo, we'll be like, okay, cool, we'll go back and we'll record the actual, like the lead. Whereas now, a lot of the stuff people don't like. A lot of artists don't like going back and singing again, especially if they've got like a good take. And I know even for some of our own stuff that we've done, like recently, the vocal which we've used in current one in the latest productions or whatnot are just the scratch. There was one that we did where saying that we redone it recently, but the original that we were working with was a vocal that we recorded like in this room, which isn't a great sounding room. It sounds pretty, it's pretty resonant, and
just EQ
it's not got any. Yeah, well, the problem is the to just EQ it is fine, but then you've got this like, you can tell where the room's when it's been recorded in a room that doesn't sound as great. But also depends what you're recording with. We were recording with like a condenser mic with very minimal kind of shielding around it and like not a reflection filter and stuff. So of course it's going to sound roomy. Whereas like I remember I read this thing online. I think it was Julia Michaels that she said about it. And she literally just has a 7B and she like in her rucksack and she just holds it in a session. Like she just takes it to every session. All her vocals are just done, sat on the back of a sofa on a 7B.
Mad.
And it's just like the biggest thing I'd say if anyone's going to record vocals and trying to get into that kind of thing, it's just like, yeah, it took a long time for me to kind of, especially over COVID, because I was being sent vocals to work with.
Yeah.
And I guess there's this thing where you're quite precious on when you record it yourself and like you're actually given a bit of direction. But like people were sending us vocals and I was be like, okay, like they sound good, but it'd be better if we went and recorded them on a 47 or like, and like that's fine, but also the performance is great. So like nowadays, like I was saying, a lot of the vocals we work with are the ones which are done on the fly, and it's just making sure that you're confident when you're doing it, like
That's
even
the
if it is a
thing.
demo vocal, record it like it's the final vocal.
That's the thing, because I've done it before where I've like done exactly what you've done. Someone's recorded it on like a 58, not even a 57, but a 58, which is fine. But and I'm like, okay, let's go to the studio, let's re-record this, let's we can make it better, and then we do that, and then when I AB, I'm like, there's something so magical about what you did 6 months ago on the 58. And then you end up thinking to yourself, are you choosing the price of gear over quality of, or price of gear / quality over the vibe and the emotion that was captured? And I always think that, vibe and emotion is much more important than quality and price tag of so it's quite hard. And obviously us both as engineers and producers, you want to always capture the feeling, the vibe, the emotion on the best gear possible, because you're getting the best of both of us. But we all know that doesn't always happen, does it? So I think you have to kind of meet in the middle, don't you, and work out
definitely
what's best for the song. It's always for the song, isn't it? And I think that's where, if there's one thing for all the listeners to really, take away and think about when doing vocal production or vocal mixing or editing or tuning, is always think, what is it doing, or what's the meaning, or what's its place within the track itself, more so than, I didn't record it on a nice mic, therefore it's rubbish, because it's so not true a lot of the time.
No, definitely.
So
it doesn't. I guess just going off what you're saying as well, like, don't get me wrong, like you could record it. You could record, a #1 record on a potato these days, and no one would be
Love
able
that.
to, no one would be able to tell the difference. Well, they might, but but also like even when we're like in the studio, we've got this like little mic. Have you seen those little Shure MV88s? I think they're called.
Is that the one that goes on you?
No, you just clip it onto you just literally attach it into the lightning port on your iPhone.
Oh, right.
And then it's basically like a stereo, like a stereo condenser mic, which is just like essentially like two little like pencil mics that are just on the end of this little
So you
thing.
plug it, is it like for voice memo?
Yeah, it's literally like a voice recorder. But we've started using that, right? Like even for like recording pianos, if we're just in a session, we'll just stick our phone on, point it, like it's directional. Like you point it, you set it up in a way that you want it to be to be heard.
Capture, yeah.
So I've done it in sessions recently where I've like taped my phone onto a box just to get like an extra bit of height on it, and then pointed it at the hammers and whatnot.
And
it sounds
good?
great. And it sounds great, and it's
really?
usually for pianos. It's become the sound, like we use it in sessions just because it's so quick, and it sounds great. Like we could sit there and go spend half an hour, 45 minutes, setting up mics, like auditioning like tones and trying to get everything like sounding amazing. But like when we're only gonna just we're only gonna mess it up, and like I say mess it up, we're only gonna like really change the sound and like produce the sound, so and like do a bit of sound design on it and actually make it cool. Like it's going to be destroyed anyway by the time we end up using it. So it's kind of like but what I was saying about this mic is it's great for stuff like that, but also for vocals and like just like getting somebody to sing a little idea into it and go, oh, just sing this like melody and whatnot, and then you just airdrop it to yourself, and then you can just make a vocal drop. And
does it make the cut normally? Like, do you actually use it on final releases?
Yeah, literally all those kind of things. Like it's quirky kind of things, and like things that make interesting. And like it also, if you just give your phone to someone in a session, just be like, sing into this. They're like, all right, and they're sat on the sofa just like doing their thing. And do
they look at you and go, Max, what is this?
Yeah, usually though they're always like they airdrop it over, and then they're like, oh, that's really cool. And then you're like, sweet, we've got sound out of this. Sounds great. So like, but I don't know. It's one of those things of, even for like those kind of things, like I was talking to Jordan about it the other day, and we've obviously got a booth at the studio, which we're really fortunate about, because I remember when I was like at uni and before the studio, I was just working out of like, a bedroom and whatnot, and having just like, I built a booth when I was at uni in my room, and like bought a few of those like big GIK like freestanding panels, and basically made a really nice, like a good sounding booth considering it was in my bedroom, and tried to make the room a little bit less like a bedroom, so when people come in it's like, oh, we're not actually in a bedroom. But it is like but yeah, I loved having the mic in the room, and obviously, and like having the artist next to you, you can just like peer over and be like, okay, cool, so sing this and whatnot, rather than having to click a talk back and do all these things. And don't get me wrong, I love doing that, because when someone's in the booth as well, it means you can monitor at like a reasonable level. You can check their mic signal through the monitors, and it like actually like really like hone in on the sound of their vocal. But I really want to get like I want to just put, well, saying that, I just need to just do it, is just leave a mic up in the room that's just always dialed in, just so, because if you ever get some ideas and just be like, oh, okay, cool, sing this BV quickly, jump on the mic and get it in. I think that would just be, having to get someone
super
to walk
handy
into
to
a booth. Yeah, I know Jack Antonoff loves doing vocals with the artist sat next to him. Like he'll literally be sat there, and then the artist would be like about 3 feet away from him, just singing into a 47 in the room, and it's just like, and his records are amazing, and they sound great.
All technical sides, does or can just go out the window sometimes, and I think it's very easy to, like I said earlier, to get too technical, and and all these things. And at the end of the day, music is a creative thing, and of course, mixing and mastering is more technical, and there is engineering involved. But with a good capture of a vocal, sometimes, like perfect example, I mixed a track about a year ago now it was a 7B, funnily enough, the most popular mic, and when when it came through, I was like, 7B. I was being a bit engineery
A bit
about
snobby
it.
about it. Yeah.
And I have to say, to this day, I like when you mix a track, you listen back to it, and I remember I was in the car. I don't know what it was, but anyway, the track was on, right, and I was like, oh, I love this vocal sound. Like, that was a good vocal sound mix, because I like to change up the mixing side a little bit,
Yeah.
just so I don't get bored. Different plugins here and there, and like I was like, right, I love this. And I looked back at the session, right, and it had like 3 plugins on it, and it was done on a 57. Sorry, 7B. Sorry,
Yeah.
and it was like a Mark EQ, a Fairchild compressor, and I think a multiband or something with a little bit of reverb. I don't even think I had any delay on it. And it was a
Yeah.
spring reverb. It was like the most random thing ever, right? But it just sounded great. And I copied the settings. And I've got a Neumann U87, so I put it
Yeah.
onto the Neumann U87 on another vocal recording that I had. And it just sounded dreadful. Like, it just was
Yeah.
like not good. And there was something so warm about the 7B, and because it sounds like it's got like a filter on it a little bit, it just
Yeah.
works so well. And that's probably
And
why
like
they're so popular. But from an engineering
Yeah.
point of view, I guess more so on the snobby side, you'd be like, oh, well, it doesn't have this, or it sounds too muffled and all of that.
Yeah.
But actually, it sounded amazing.
Yeah. No,
So
they can be great. And the thing is like, obviously, like, it is all about the performance. It's all about, like, it's all about capturing that. Like, the thing is you're capturing a moment. Like, you want someone to feel like, they're being able to push all the emotion out that they want to push in that one moment to get that vocal take. But also, like, this is now before you even counted the artist in. This is like when you're setting up your studio or prepping for the day, just make, like, obviously, like I said, very fortunate that we do have an 87 set up all the time, or a 47. Like, one of the two is usually there ready to go.
yeah.
And but investing in a good mic as well, just so you've got something in your locker just ready to go, that without, it will sound flawless.
And it
just
will
'cause it
save
means that-
time in the long run as well.
Yeah,
like
literally.
with EQing and all that sort of stuff, it will
And
help
I
you
remember,
out.
yeah, like, I remember as well, like, you can don't get me wrong, you can do it with any microphone as long as as long as you're confident with knowing what you're working with. It's the same as learning a set of monitors in a room. It's just like, know that mic and know it's kind of, I guess I've been trying to get a bit more into it, like, rather than, like, trying to get a bit more nerdy and trying to understand, like, well, I say that, like, the thing is like, it's one of those things that when you're using them every day, you just kind of will gravitate towards something for somebody.
Yeah.
But like, if you've got like one mic on like one mic on hand, and that's all you've got to work with, make it work.
Deal
Like,
with what you've got, I guess.
yeah, give it, mate. Like, we've done quite a lot of like live stuff as well. That we've done a lot of live mixing, and the thing which baffles me is listening to some of the singers that we're working with in these bits, and they're all on handheld mics, and you listen to it and you're just like, wow, this sounds great. And they are literally singing it to a mic and dancing around, and you literally think, wow, they've gone into this with, I'm performing today. I'm going to do a performance and it's going to sound great. And they've definitely gone and done that, because by the time you then get it to work on and listen to, and you're just thinking, wow, their performance is on it. And like, that's it. It's performance. And like you said, just making sure that, like, even just down to when the session starts, is the moment someone walks into your room, like, your job starts,
Yeah. Amazing.
And like, yeah, it's just making sure that everyone's comfortable, make them feel at home, and
fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, is there any kind of tips and advice that you would give your young self that you wish you knew back then, now? To any of our listeners, any advice in getting into vocal tuning, production, mixing?
Don't overthink it.
Yeah.
Like, obviously,
we all
there's
overthink.
101
That's a good
things
one.
There's 101 things that you can say and do and whatnot, but like, just making sure that, if you are, just, I say don't overthink it, but just remember that the vocal is the most important thing when you're when you're working on, I say pop music, it's but yeah, just making sure that your artist is comfortable, and they're, as long as they're comfortable, you're going to get great vocal performance. And if they are having like an off day or something like that, comfort them, make sure that they're okay. But I say, don't overthink it. That's me talking technical.
Yeah.
But obviously, kind of learn what you're doing beforehand. So then it means that when you're in a session, actually, just worry, when you're in a room with someone, just make sure you worry about the artist and try and, I don't know, that probably, I might have went backwards on myself saying that. But by saying don't overthink it, but also worry about getting everything right before you go do it.
But yeah, I mean, within reason, everything's within reason, of course. Well, thank you so much again, Max, for coming onto this podcast. We'll see you again very soon.